Hello, and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental nerds, Nick and Laura. On today's episode, we give our shout-outs. Nick and I ramble about his recent trip to Hawaii. I'm not in the least bit jealous. Then we sit down with Scott Deitche to discuss working on water, business development, and his love of writing mafia novels. It is that cool.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
Known him a while. He's a good friend, so excited to have him here. And finally, continuing our weird bodies theme, I'm sure many of you know that your nose and ears continue to grow throughout your lifetime. Or if you didn't know, now you know.
Yeah.
But it's not really growing so much as gravity stretching out the cartilage in them over time, which is kind of creepy.
Super creepy.
But hey, that's science.
Yeah. That's super uncomfortable sounding. I don't know what it is about the idea that gravity drags you down. Like, I don't know.
Totally.
I mean, I get it, but it is so weird. It's just, no thanks. No thanks, gravity. You know, keep your paws to yourself, okay? This is 2021. You got to be more progressive than this. You can't just grab people's noses and ears and pull them down.
I think too that it's not necessarily like age. We haven't aged. We've been pulled on for too long.
Right. Well, do you know it's like you're actually taller at the beginning of the day because your back is not compressed, and over the day you get shorter, which is also creepy. Thanks, gravity. But yeah, super uncomfortable. So you're the tallest. If you ever want to like be impressive with your height, get measured first thing in the morning. So
be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Hit that music. Our shout out for today is for the NAEP 2021 Best Available or Innovative Technology Award, which goes to the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, Bridging North America, and AECOM for the Gordie Howe International Bridge, Post NEPA Environmental Management and Compliance Program for their innovative way of tracking environmental requirements during construction. Congrats to everyone. Be sure to share your promotions, new jobs, professional, and project awards with us over on the EPR website so that we can share them here for you. Be sure to register for NAEP's Coastal Resiliency webinar on August 26th, where we will be discussing coastal and climate resiliency success stories, featuring Holly Schmidt, Doug Balemo, and Dr. Rob Young. It's also narrated by an amazing, talented, and all-around great guy, our very own Nick Frederick.
Hey!
Guess who
Thanks,
wrote
Laura.
this?
Thank you so much. It's so kind of you to say those wonderful words.
I meant everyone, apparently. Head on over to naep.org/webinars-new for more information. Today's episode is sponsored by GPI. Since 1966, GPI has designed, managed, and supported their clients on a wide array of projects. They are employee-owned, known for their technical knowledge and commitment to getting each job done well. Their widely recognized quality of service rises from the talent and energy of their exceptional team. The work ethic and dedication of all the men and women at GPI allow them to deliver consistent quality service to government agencies, municipalities, architects, commercial developers, and property owners. If you would like to sponsor a future episode and have Nick or I read it in this wonderful fashion, head over to environmentalprofessionalsradio.com and check out the sponsor form for details. Now let's get to our segment.
Yeah, how are you guys?
How was it?
How was Hawaii? Hawaii was great. It's it's hard to complain about Hawaii. Work was good.
Like a work inside kind of a thing. Did you get to do much outside stuff?
Yeah. You got to take some time. But the funny thing is when you're there on the East Coast, you're awake at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So your mornings are pretty free. You know, no one else is awake that time. The coffee shops don't open until like 7 or 8 there. So like if you wanted to make some money, that's the investment. A coffee shop that opens at 6 a.m. out there would do massive business. I just feel like, yeah, we did our meeting on Wednesday, and I had some other things. I had meetings all throughout the day, but our main one with our clients was on Wednesday. And it was actually kind of funny. It was a meeting where we started out, your clients were like, I don't understand what this is. And then we just explained, we're like, we're trying to basically give you a database of all of your projects, all of your files, all in one spot. So you can just search for them and pull them up. And we blew their minds. And so that was pretty cool. That was really fun. They're like, you can do that? And then, we're like, yeah, we can do this. Heck, we can even, technically, we could also put GIS data to this and make it an actual like map. We could do a mapper. But, that's, step 2. But yeah, that was really cool. So Honestly, that was my
step
favorite
two,
part.
though? I mean, isn't it easier to collect the requirements for that now?
Yeah. So, so that's what we talked about, so it's like, okay, so if we're building this database for you and that's what you want to do in the future, we're going to collect all of the information now, but the map, actually creating the mapper would be a different process, but we would use the data that we are pulling together now.
Yeah.
Which is really, really neat. And yeah, like it got their gears turning. They're like, we could be a model for all installations. So we're like, yeah, absolutely. They really could be something that would be great for everybody. So yeah, that was pretty neat. That was really fun. Honestly, that was work-wise. It was a really cool meeting for that reason.
Nice.
But it's Hawaii's pretty great. It's hard to be mad about Hawaii. So beaches are beautiful. The food, if you like seafood, you like Asian food, just hard to beat. Like we had, I had sushi with Dennis Peters, who's been on the show.
Yeah.
And he said, I was like, man, that was so good. He's like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's good. And, and it's just funny. I'm like, well, if this is just pretty good out here, then next time we're going to the great place. And then, really blow my mind. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so actually I was going to, contact Dennis next week and ask him if I make my way out there, like, could he help me figure out where to go and stuff. So
yeah. You mean after I collect, we see, Laura thought that getting out there was super expensive. The ticket's about like what, $900 to get out there from the East Coast.
I looked up, it's less than that from here now, which is crazy. Like,
yeah.
Just going to, I've been trying to go to Denver and it's like over $600,
which is crazy expensive.
Which for a weekend, I just can't,
No.
I just can't. And then, but $800 for a week in Hawaii? Hell yeah, I could.
Yeah, but then you have your 50th state, and that's too much. We can't have that. I shouldn't have even told you. I'm I'm totally upset. It's too funny.
You should not have told me, because now I'm like super motivated, extra motivated.
Yeah. But it just means I have to get there before, since I'm younger. I have some time. I have a few years to get to other states. Too funny. But yeah, I mean, if you do go, I've got lots of other recommendations too. I actually met an old friend of mine out there, and she took me to a place called Side Street in Honolulu, which was really fun because I told people that and they were like, how'd you know about that? They're almost mad, That's a local place. You shouldn't know about that.
Who told you?
Yeah. They have a lot of great hiking trails out there too, by the way.
Mm.
And that is a lot of fun.
On Honolulu? I
was on Oahu, which is where Honolulu is. And
I was like, wait a minute, it's not an island, is it?
Yeah, it's a city. It's a city. But it's the most, I think 80% of the revenue from Hawaii comes from Honolulu. There's a lot, that's where most of the big business is. It's where a lot of the tourism is. If you want to do a touristy thing, you want the Mai Tais and the resorts and all that, that's Waikiki. That's where you'd go.
Right.
Beach is extremely safe and it's really, really calm. But if you want to wild adventure stuff, you go to different islands for different things, But yeah, the surfing actually on Oahu on the North Shores, that's why they do the competitions for surfing. Mm-hmm. So they'll do but that's always in the winter because that's when the waves get really strong. So
do you surf?
Oh God, no. Really bad at that. It's all arms, which I don't know. For those of you that don't know, if you look at me, that means it's a problem for me. And, the coordination part's kind of fun trying to get up on the board. But by the end of an hour, my arms were dead. It just totally exhausted from trying. And there's actually an old coworker of mine took me out the first time. And I'll say his name here because Steve Pyle, he was great, but he totally just was like, all right, cool. See you later. I'm like, what am I doing? He's like, just, try to stand up. Yeah. And he was so good at surfing. He was just like, hey, Nick, what's going on? Doing that almost like a movie. He would just wait, slide right past me. And I'm like, curse you, Dave. And
you're just flailing shark bait.
Right, exactly. Flailing shark bait. It's exactly how I felt. But when you're sitting out there on that board and you're looking up, on one side you have Diamond Head, on the other you have the city skyline. It's really, really cool. It's hard to beat. And the water's warm and it's not as salty as it is in other parts. So
interesting.
It's actually really, really great. Really great experience. It's a good place to start if you wanted to try. Just do it.
Really. Oh, I've tried. I'm not trying again.
Yeah. I know. It's a hard thing. And then board rash is something I also learned about. So
I didn't have a problem with board rash. I had a problem with board bruises.
Yeah, I hurt the next day for sure. Trying to get the board back was really funny because I just didn't realize how tired my arms were. And so I'm just like trying desperately not to drag this thing on the ground as I'm like totally like my whole body is like convulsing. It's pretty funny. But yeah, it's kudos to people that can do that well because that is so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, I never really got over the feeling of drowning in 2 feet of water. So.
I know. Well, it's funny because I remember actually sitting on the board just like trying to soak in this beautiful scenery. And then all I could think of is the Jaws theme in the back of my head. I just kept hearing it every time I sat, just for even a minute, dun dun. My feet are just dangling off the side of this board. Yeah. So yeah, just too funny. A great experience, like I say, I wouldn't trade it, but yeah, surfing is for younger people, I think. And for it's just a challenging thing. You have to do a lot of practice to be any kind of good, but
yeah,
that's just most things, I guess.
There's a boogie boarding for the rest of us. Right.
Or body surfing. I can do that. That's fun. We did some of that this time. Yeah, that was fun. So yeah, great trip though. Great trip.
Cool. Well, can't wait to get there myself soon.
All right. Yeah, but no rush though. It's beautiful all year. So even if the safe time to go is now, because the water does get a little choppier in the winter, but it's not bad. Just got to be careful where you go. So I don't need you drowning.
I don't need to be drowning either.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. But anyway.
We can talk about our least favorite ways to die in a different episode.
Right, exactly. That'll be upcoming episode. Let's get to our interview. Welcome back to EPR. Today we have Scott Deitche with us. We've been dying to have him on the show because Scott is the vice president for Greenman Peterson Incorporated, otherwise known as GPI. And he's an author and mob historian. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome. Thanks for having me on.
So I know I'm dying to ask you questions about the mafia, but Laura says I have to do the environmental ones first. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Sure. I've been with GPI now. This is going on 14 years. And, like a lot of other people in our industry, when I started off 25 years ago, I started off with dreams of being a fish biologist, and my degree was in marine biology. And I started that way. I worked for the Marine Research Institute in St. Petersburg, Florida, really doing primarily fish-related work. Then I had moved over to Pinellas County Water Resources. And then I started getting involved more in surface water quality. And when I came to GPI, I kind of really got into the whole realm of surface water quality regulations like NPDES and TMDLs. And
right.
We love our acronyms in our business.
Yeah.
So a host of other
Absolutely.
acronyms. And, over the years, I've kind of gotten to more of a management role, business development, but I still do a lot of project management. And occasionally I'll get out in the field once in a while, still just to keep those technical skills sharp.
Of course.
Awesome. Scott, I didn't know how you got started. I've known you for a couple of years now. Have you always grown up in Florida, and were you always interested in the environment?
So I grew up in New Jersey, and I've wanted to be a marine biologist, oceanographer, second grade. I think it was second grade.
Yeah.
So I pretty much had my career path figured out early. So I came down to Eckerd College in '89 to pursue a degree in marine biology, did the 5-year Eckerd plan, graduated in '94 with a degree in marine biology. Actually went back to New Jersey for about a year to work in an aquarium on the Jersey Shore, Jenkinson's Aquarium. And then a position opened up at the Marine Research Institute. Somebody I knew there said, hey, there's a position to go out and you net fish all day long. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. So, came down here to the Marine Research Institute in St. Pete, and I've been here since then.
Gotcha. And so, I guess that means you spend a lot of time on boats doing environmental work, and that's pretty novel, I think, for some of our listeners. So is that as awesome as it sounds, or is it more challenging than I think it is?
It is pretty awesome when the weather's good. And with the weather's nice down here most of the time. In my current position with GPI, the others go out on the boat.
Right.
I did get to go out on a kayak not too long ago, but okay. I don't get to go out on boats as much. Most of the water sampling we do now is primarily it's either land-based or primarily out of canoes or small skiffs. But one of my first gigs at the Marine Research Institute was I actually got to go out on headboats, or these large party boats, real far offshore, collect specimens of grouper and amberjack, got to fish a little bit.
Oh, wow.
fantastic. And then when I got to Pinellas County, we did a lot of in-bay and open water sampling. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, as you know, I spent a lot of time on boats collecting water samples myself with EPC in Tampa Bay. I know I have a lot of interesting and fun, crazy stories from just spending a lot of time getting a boat in and out of the water and then dealing with weather and other things. Do you have any fun mishaps or adventures you could tell us about?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have launched a boat without putting in the plugs.
Yeah, same.
I ran aground leading one of my first trips for Pinellas County. But, in my book, if you have not run aground in Tampa Bay, you've not truly boated in Tampa Bay. I've run out of gas in the middle of old Tampa Bay and had to walk the boat. I wrapped the rope around my waist and walked the Pinellas boat to shore about, I was close to a mile. Luckily, the bay's so shallow there, it wasn't bad. Yeah. And another great one I remembered in between right before here is one time we were out doing, and Laura, you might remember the benthic mapping. Was it EMAP sampling they used to do? Yeah. So we had this big ponar on a winch, and I tied the rope to the end of the ponar, and it was pretty heavy. And we raised it over the water and let it go. Only I didn't tie the knot really well, and the grab went down to the bottom. So I had to jump in the water and try to pull that up and tie it back on the winch. And I did win an award for the knot tying award for that from my colleagues. So,
of course.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, if you spend any time in the field, it's you're going to have those kind of crazy stories.
Oh, of course. And well, you mentioned the shift you have now, so you're in more of a managerial role, and so. Mm-hmm. So you're responsible for strategic business development, which sounds so daunting when you first start doing it. And do you have any advice maybe for people that are just starting to do that kind of thing, making that transition from being, a field person to management?
Yeah, it's not something they teach in school from a technical perspective, certainly is, how to manage people, how to work with people, how to develop business relationships, business development, marketing. It's all about developing relationships with potential clients, understanding where the services, where things are going. 10, 15 years ago, was resiliency really even on anyone's radar? I mean, It was a little bit, but now that's become, especially down here in Florida, such a huge market. So understanding where things are going from a business perspective as well as, what are some of the pressing issues. So, advice I would give is there are a lot of really good trainings online, read up on, what it takes to be a good manager, things, developing one sense of emotional intelligence of, understanding what people look for in a leader, what people look for in a manager. Don't watch The Office to get manager tips, and, if it's something you want to do, a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to continue on the technical path. I started with just project management, which I really liked and, developed into what I'm doing now, which I really, really enjoy doing that. So my other advice is to be flexible because you might think you want to go down this one track of just technical, but if an opportunity arises, give it a chance, do something outside the technical realm or, expand those skills that you have. You might find out that you enjoy that just as much, if not more.
Yeah, that's great advice. And, talking about trends, and seeing how those come through, you mentioned resiliency in Florida. Do you have any recent resiliency projects you could kind of talk through with us?
Yeah, we've been getting more and more into resiliency work here in the state of Florida. One of the first projects we were involved in is going back about 5 or 6 years ago. Was the city of Miami Beach had this huge construction program where they were literally raising the roads at critical infrastructure 3 feet because of increased sunny day flooding from rising sea levels. So we were involved in that project, and that's kind of springboarded into some other work. And we've recently done some work with the city of St. Petersburg, doing a resiliency study for a neighborhood that is already susceptible to flooding, but now with rising sea levels, they're even getting sunny day, just regular high tide flooding. So looking for, for a variety of different scenarios, variety of different engineered solutions to that. So, we also recently assisted the city of St. Pete with looking at how do they do that from a codes perspective, from codes and ordinances, which is a whole other part of it is looking at the way that the city or municipality runs and operates from a code and ordinance perspective, how you strengthen that to help strengthen resiliency.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a complicated process for sure. It's never straightforward, and I think now I'm allowed to ask questions about you being an author. So you are an accomplished author, which is really cool, and it's but writing is often described as the loneliest profession. Do you ascribe to that belief, or is it more cathartic for you?
It's lonely in the sense that you're the one doing it, and I've done some work with co-authors before. I kind of prefer doing my own thing with writing. And it's a little different, like, the writing I do at GPI, these large reports, they're definitely more of a collaborative effort. And I welcome that because from the technical perspective, I need that input from my engineers, from my other scientists. GPI here, we have a great network here in our environmental group of, people that are really good at QA, QC and all that. So from the technical perspective, from my day job writing, I call it my career writing, I like the collaborative effort. But for the Mafia stuff, for the, that type of things, I do enjoy kind of the sole focus of it. Yeah, it's cathartic, but it's enjoyable. I mean, I love every part of it. The worst part about writing or the hardest part about writing is the actual physical act of writing.
Yes.
The research is cool.
100%.
When the book's out, it's cool. All that, the promotion, all that stuff is great. Just sitting there behind the computer, that's the hardest part.
It was the best of times. Must have been just sat there forever. That's how I feel about every time. It's like, what's the next part? I don't know. So,
yeah, I would have been terrible writing on a typewriter because I cut and paste like crazy.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Yeah, we're in better times now for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Recently, you had a chance though to combine your work with writing too. You had a case study in a book.
Yeah, so I did a green career guide back in 2010, right when, green jobs were getting hot. I did it for this company, ABC Clio, which primarily publishes books for universities and, educational institutions. So I've done one or two other small things for them on books on sustainability, but they have a new book actually comes out today called Sustainable Planet. And they were looking for people to do case studies. And one of the things they were looking at were case studies in environmental justice. So they said, hey, you kind of have a weird niche here with what you write about in addition to the environmental topics. And they said, are there any areas where there's criminal activity or criminal gangs that are having an impact on environmental justice? And I thought of one immediately in the Campania region of Italy. There's a organized crime group, the Camorra. They're based out of Naples, one of the largest organized crime groups in Europe. And one of the things they're known for is illegal dumping of regular waste, but illegal dumping of toxic waste. And this has been a problem for a couple of decades. And because of this constant toxic waste dumping, there have been really high levels of cancer, big cancer clusters. There have been ecological effects. There's been effects of the agriculture in the area. So it's become a huge environmental justice issue as well. So it was a chance to kind of combine looking at the history of this organized crime group, how they got in with the political structure, and how that led to them basically being able to do this, pillaging of the environment for so long. It's still going on to some extent, but things have changed a lot. There's been a lot of law enforcement activity in Italy about it. But yeah, it was a really interesting study.
I'm just picturing the mob family getting together and going, we need to talk about circular economy.
Oh,
how do we keep doing what we're doing and protect the environment?
Right.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I do want to mention before I forget that today is not today. So it is already out in our future world now. No worries. But that's a great segue into the next question. So because, I've been on your mob history tours in Ybor City, which is awesome. I know I've been going to Ybor since I was 13. I love it. I always have to go there when I visit. And I had a fascination with organized crime growing up. So I've kind of been watching you. I don't know if you know this. I've been kind of keeping my eye on what you're doing.
But not in a stalky way. Just a normal, regular amount of
stalking, just kind of, I just always thought what you're doing is really cool. And it's so neat. I didn't even know the story you just said about, it's so crazy how your interests and stuff can come together in these crazy ways. But when did you first start writing about Tampa Mafia? Was that something you were always interested in?
So, I kind of grew up outside New York City. So you always got a lot of the mob news out of New York. And my mom was a big fan of the old gangster movies. So it was always kind of a little bit of a fascination. But kind of the kickstart was after I saw Goodfellas in the movies back in 1990. I was like, I want to read the book this is based on. So I picked up the book Wise Guy by Nick Pileggi. And that started my interest in reading. And it was kind of it just kind of started growing. And then it was like late 94, early 95, like when there was nothing on the internet. It was like this one tech site that was this guy writing stuff about the mafia.
Yeah.
And I met a historian from England, and he said, "Oh, I see I had moved to St. Pete at that point. He said, I see you're living in Tampa. I have these congressional hearings from 1950 in Tampa all about the mob there." Mm-hmm. And I really didn't know much about it. So I'm like, "Oh." So he sent them to me, and I read it, and these great stories of gambling and gangland killings. I'm like, "Oh." That kind of lit the light bulb up. Fast forward over the next 6 years or so, I'm just do a lot of research on my own. And then I started writing for some long defunct websites in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right.
And then somewhere around that time period, I'm like, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to write a book. How hard can that be?" So that started, and my first book came out in 2004. And since then, I've written 8 other books. I can't even count how many articles for newspapers and blogs and other stuff. So that's and then I run the Tampa Mafia tour that Laura's been on. So it's kind of become, I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I love for my career and something else that I love on the side that's had dividends as well.
It's very cool. And then you were expanding I just happened to notice you kind of were expanding into, I think you're doing some stuff in Las Vegas.
Yeah. So the Las Vegas thing, I'm a member of the advisory council of the Mob Museum in Vegas, and I've been involved with them since the start. I donated some materials to them. They're one of they're an accredited museum. They were ranked like number 19 last year in the country. So that's my plug for the museum. So that's been a great thing I've been involved with. And, the cool thing, getting back real quick to how this kind of ties together both of my interests, is how I've used these Tampa Mafia tours with GPI to our advantage. I've taken many clients out on the tours. We've offered these as like kind of client specials. And, it's been a great way to relate to clients through this other thing other than just, "Hey, we want to work for you. What do you have to work with?" And then there'll be people like, "Oh, you're the guy that wrote that book." And I'm like, "Yeah." So not to use it to my advantage, but it gives you that kind of extra connection. And, I tell people, GPI is the only consulting firm that offers our clients mafia tours.
Special.
Yeah. It's too funny. And I hadn't heard a whole lot about like the Tampa Mafia. Is it like every bit as wild and crazy as you hear New York, Chicago? Is it every bit like that?
Yeah, they were closely tied together. It was a smaller family. Tampa's, a much smaller city, obviously, than Chicago or New York City. They all the mafia families got their start. New Orleans, maybe the earliest in the late 1800s, but by the early 1900s, the mafia were around in many cities around the country. And the Tampa Mafia kind of had its height of power in 50s and 60s, I would say. 50s definitely because they controlled a lot of the casinos in Havana, Cuba. And there were a lot of very close ties between the mafia in New York and Chicago and Tampa and New Orleans. So they all kind of knew each other and connected. In fact, one of the things I get asked all the time is Santo Trafficante, who's the boss of the mafia here in Tampa, when he got kicked out of Cuba in 1959, he was approached by the CIA. And I actually talked to the gentleman that approached him, and he set up a meeting with Sam Giancana, the head of the Chicago mob, Santo Trafficante, and Johnny Roselli, this other mobster from Chicago, at the Fontainebleau Hotel. And the CIA literally paid the mafia a couple $100,000 if they would kill Fidel Castro. Now, obviously, Castro just passed away a few years ago, so they never did it. But yeah,
right.
There's just crazy stuff that people, don't even realize, that happened 50 some 60 years ago. But yeah, our government was paying the mob to get involved in operations against a foreign leader. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is totally wild. And gosh, it's funny. So this is obviously very important to you. And my hobby is stand-up comedy, right? I enjoy doing that. But even as like just a mediocre comic in a small town, right, or smaller city, literally everyone I know asks me if I've seen Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is a great show. But it's like they think all comedians must watch the one show about comedy. Does that same thing happen to you where, everyone you meet, like, oh, you like the Mafia. So, Godfather, right? Boardwalk Empire. These must be your favorite shows?
Yeah. Or, The Sopranos, which I like them all, like you.
Yeah.
But yeah. And the reason I always, I get asked, how did you get interested in this? That, I know what I'm going to answer already, that everyone wants to know. And fine, I totally Hey, I like the fact that there's people that interested that want to ask me that stuff. But yeah. I used to be like, oh, these actors that do like 25 press junkets a day, how do they get tired of that? And you're like, okay, well, I see.
Yeah, right.
But hey, look, we're fortunate enough that people are that interested in us that want to ask that and share that. So
absolutely, for sure.
Do you ever get, I think about writing books sometimes and I think like, oh, I can't write about that person. Like the families are still here in Tampa. I know at least one descendant.
Oh, really? Wow.
Do you ever catch flack from people, or do they like what you're writing, and or are you in touch with them?
Yeah. So I would say, well, first of all, everything I write, and this comes from the technical side background. You publish a scientific paper, you're going to have tons of notes and attributions and references. Same thing with the books I write. Even if I don't necessarily structure them as a more of an academic style book, backup documentation, public records. I don't just make spurious accusations or allegations that will then get you in hot water, for one. But I try to be as accurate as I can.
They're just kind of scary people to get in hot water with.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and most of the stuff I write about is historic in nature. And I would say of the family members I've met that I've written about, I would say about 95% have been positive interactions. Sure, there's sometimes people like, I can't believe you wrote that, or why did you write that? But way, way more. And even in Tampa, I've been approached by people like, oh, that was my grandfather. We never knew this. We always suspected this. Or,
oh, neat.
Sometimes people will be like, well, that's not how it happened. Let me tell you how it really happened. So
yeah.
I think for the most part, people realize whether it's the organized crime here in New York, whatever, it's part of the history of the cities. And in smaller cities like Tampa, and as you know, Laura, a lot of people know each other. They grew up together. So it's an even closer connection.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, what's next? So both for work and your book writing.
Yeah, so work, last year obviously was threw a curveball to a lot of people, but we've actually did pretty well, and we're looking to expand this year. Both in terms of the services we offer, we're looking at some more resiliency projects. I think that's an area that I'm more interested in as well. And Florida is, in fact, just earlier today, I just saw the recommended budget for next year for water projects, and they're still pumping a lot of money into water. And hopefully we can avoid another repeat of that red tide blue-green algae fiasco a few years ago. So I'm looking forward to growth in our area. We're expanding. So that's always a great thing. And so that's, I would say from a career standpoint, I'm enjoying where I am, looking forward to expanding what we can offer and where we can offer, and teaming with people like our friend Justin Krebs, who I know have been on one of yours before. We've talked about teaming up on some stuff with our Northeast offices and his group, which is another important thing. Oh, real quick, super big point of advice is networking.
Yeah. Yes.
Networking is huge.
100%.
Yeah, that's always my career advice is every single job I've gone, including GPI, have been because I've known the person or known somebody rather than just kind of going in there cold. Yeah, I just did one for Eckerd last week. It was a Zoom meeting with, like juniors and seniors, and the flexibility networking were the two things that I was talking about with them. And I used to do Life After Eckerd, which I'd go to their marine science seminar. And, I started back when I was at FMRI and ended, they changed the format and ended a few years ago. So I got to tell them as I've grown up in my career, like things that they should do to get to that next level. So
yeah.
And it's 100% right. I mean, like networking it's a weird thing because it's so important, but it just seems again like an insurmountable mountain. But you take it one step at a time, and people are afraid. They think that you have to just know everybody, and that's not how it works. It's not how anything works. You got to put time in.
No, and Laura knows it's down here in the Tampa area. We have a huge environmental community, but yet it's a small environmental community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's great. So many. I mean, you wouldn't be here if we didn't have that network. Yeah,
that's how we get people on the show. It's networking. Yeah,
and we're a member of TBAAP and I guess FAAP by default. But at the Eckerd thing, I said, go to one of their socials when they start up again in person or even their luncheons, because, that's how you build it.
Right. So somebody once told me, because I was like, I'm always a little anxious at the beginning when I don't know people. I'm in a new setting and there's a group of people talking, and he just goes, all you have to say is, hey, do you mind if I join you? if they say no, they're assholes, and you don't want to listen to them anyway, right?
That's a good point. Yeah,
it's so easy. It's like, mind if I join you? It's just that.
And I know, and I know how hard it is. I'm fairly social, but I'm at conferences. Sometimes you walk up to a group of people, and there's always a little bit of that moment of discomfort, no matter how gregarious you might be. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good advice. I like that. But anyway, getting back to what's next, and then I just turned in a manuscript for my latest Mafia book, so that will be out probably. I think they said January of 2022.
Oh,
Cool.
Nice. And so, what's the topic? Are we allowed to say? I don't want to spoil it.
No, I'll say it is. I've always kind of wanted to do a New York book, but I wanted to pick a topic that nobody's ever written about before. So there was this group of mob-connected drug dealers and hitmen in the 70s called the Purple Gang. And there was a little while there where they were like in all the newspapers and magazines as like the secret hit team of the mafia. And it was like for a couple of years, they were like, the boogeyman for the media and organized crime, both in the Northeast as well as in Florida. And I always wanted to write a story like the truth behind the Purple Gang. And it was really interesting because I usually come from an area where I have a ton of information, I have to winnow it down. And this one, there wasn't much information. I kind of had to expand out, but it was like all my books. I love the research part. So and like all my books, I said I wouldn't procrastinate, but I did.
Yeah, I think that's the rules. Actually, you have to procrastinate a little.
Yeah, someone was asking me, they were writing their first book. I said, well, you're never a real author unless you A, procrastinate, or B, miss a deadline from your publisher or your editor. So
yeah,
then you're an author.
Do you have any aspirations, or have you I'm big on manifesting, so we can manifest right now if you were looking to get a book turned into a movie or anything like that?
So one of my books right now is under option. It's been under option for a few years. I've had two other ones that have, one other one that was formerly under option, and another one I was approached by. So just for your listeners, when a book gets optioned, a person or a creator, whatever, says, okay, I'm going to option this book for 3 years. That means no one else can do anything other than you reprinting this book. So I'm going to option this book. I want to make a TV show out of it. I want to make a movie out of it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, and very few of them really ever come to that fruition, but it takes it off the market for anyone else. So, Nick, if you option my book, Laura can't say, well, I want to make a movie out of your book. You hold the rights to do that.
Yeah, gotcha.
So yeah, sure, it would be great. And, and I've heard stories from the people that have optioned my books about what they want to do with it. I don't think I realized how long and difficult a process it is to take something from an idea to like a movie or a TV show.
For sure.
Yeah. So, but, they're looking for content, and I've seen some of the stuff, there's so much on TV now that I think the quality gets a little watered down in places. So,
it has to.
But with the streaming services and stuff, there's definitely a lot more opportunity to get stuff made into a different format, whether it's a mini series or a Netflix movie or whatever. So yeah, holding out hope that someday one of them comes to fruition.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Some of my favorite things I've watched have been just 2-season mini show series.
Yeah, absolutely, those are great.
And, if it, when that happens, you can also come back here and tell us whether they did a great job with your work or not. And, we can put that out here.
Yeah. Well, I've heard from other authors that have had books made into movies and such that, no matter how big of an author you are, how, best-selling an author you are, in the movie world, the writer's like at the bottom. You're 100%. Way down on the totem pole.
Yes. But still cool. Oh, right. Laura gave me a note and I missed it. That's what just happened there. I really wish we could talk to you for another hour and ask you even more Mafia questions. It just means that you'll have to come back and tell us Mafia stories from time to time. But is there anything else before we let you go that you could tell us about where people can find you and what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, Scott Deitche. People can connect with me on a professional basis. For those interested in just kind of the mob stuff, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. TampaMafia.com is the website for the Mafia tours if you're in the Tampa area. And GPInet.com is GPI, where I work. So a variety of different ways if anyone wants to get in touch with me for either.
Okay, awesome. Great. That's awesome.
Thanks, Scott. It was so awesome to catch up with you and have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
And that's our show. We want to thank Scott for giving us a taste of the Mafia life today. Really fun having him on. And we'll have to have him back to hear more of those wild and crazy stories. So please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. See ya, everybody.